I think I had my sexual awakening or something when I was about 12. I was getting my hair cut by a girl in hot pants, and I suddenly, and a very low cut thing, and I was very taken with it and thought, that must be what I'm here for. A virginity at 14 in the usual fumbly way that guys do with, a girl who was, known in the area. I don't know, it was, that's great, that's out of the road. It's not a terribly great memory now, but it was at the time, I can tell you. Since my first exhibition here, which was the first, the first fetish one in Ireland, and I got a lot of sort of nudge, nudge, wink, wink kind of reaction, and to a large extent I still do.
Sex now markets fads, fashions and fetishes, which is good news for Hector Heathwood, a fetish photographer living and working in Dublin. But in spite of his profession, Hector still believes that there is a line we should not cross.
It might seem a strange concept, but I'm actually for censorship. I think that there are certain things that shouldn't be shown, or what's the word? Even sensationalized in the media. But everybody who says to me censorship is a bad thing, I'll ask them about paedophiles and stuff like that. Surely they should be censorship. And some of the grosser forms of hardcore sex that are out there at the minute. All this thing about grannies with dwarfs and stuff. It's done. That's not done for any sexual thing. It's actually done for people to laugh at. And surely I don't see that that's a good thing or a healthy thing. So, yeah, unusually I'm pro-censorship. But, of course, not when it happens to me. But I've had images taken down, on MySpace, and I've actually written them and said, look, this stuff's in the public arena. I've never had a big problem with it because, I am usually sort of sensitive to the people who are going to view it. And my audience, aren't there to see hardcore pornography, so I wouldn't be producing it anyway. I think the only one I ever really had a problem with was one photograph I have which was taken in a church, and somebody complained about that when I worked in another college in town, and it's kind of, in a way, it was funny because of the way the situation was dealt with, but I was brought in to talk about it, and I was shown the letter, and it said, I think some of Hector's images are sexually exploitative. And I said, I thought they all were. And it's apparently not, so I've got a thumbs up from a big college in Dublin. But that was the end of the thing, and there was no real debate on it. It's something that I enjoy, so I suppose like in any other hobby, the more you put into it, so to speak, the more you get out of it, and I put a lot of time and effort in, I think somebody said once, a man thinks about sex for, once like every 13 seconds or something. And I was wondering what to think about for the rest of the time. It must be bloody football or something. I have no idea,
As a fetish photographer, Hector sees a lot of sexual imagery, something he's always enjoyed.
It's not something that I would go around thrusting on people, Generally speaking, I meet people who are semi-interested anyway, and will play about with that. But I have lots of, the word is vanilla. I have vanilla relationships, I don't know if I actually scared anybody away. Suddenly jumping up with a pair of handcuffs and a horse whip. Hey, guess what? But you can be more subtle and ease it into the thing. And sometimes girls have introduced stuff that they like to do that I'd never given a second thought. And again, I might think that that's fun, or I might not enjoy it myself. But I would feel free to say it, and I would hope that anybody who was with me would feel free the same way. I don't think it's ever caused like a breakup, but I suppose like anything else, relationships just come and go. Nothing's forever.
Relationships have come and gone for Hector, including 2 marriages, but life goes on.
Generally between marriages, I'm out there trying to get as much as I can get, but I'm getting older now, so it's getting harder. Goddamn, Quality and quantity of sex life. I think quantity as much as you can get and sustain, basically. The quality, I think it should be something that's shared between 2 people. Well, well, sorry, let's not be restrictive. 2 or more people. When I'm in a relationship with somebody, I am monogamous. Mostly. I do my very best.
Fetish photographer Hector Heathwood works in Dublin. He is surrounded by temptation every day, but he has nothing against monogamy. He has even tried it once or twice.
I'm okay with the whole thing that, we wanted to be exclusively with each other. And that's what we were saying. We weren't saying we're going to do something in front of God. We were saying we were going to do something to each other. And that's where the vow that we take was coming in. When we actually got married, my first wife was 18 and 2 weeks, for the wedding bands that you have to put in the paper, and I was 21. So we were very young, very impulsive, and it seemed like a really good idea at the time, And, I have no regrets. I'm sure, I hope she hasn't got any either, but, we're still friendly, even though we would have divorced almost 20 years ago, we still keep in touch, at birthdays and Christmas time and stuff like that. So, we became friends later on, like any, young married couple, you had your ups and down moments, But, that marriage lasted 7 years, and most of it was like, good memories and fun. When you're in a single person monogamous relationship, it's a very different thing. There's a lot more, emotional involvement and reliance on each other, and that bonding thing where you start to think not as a person but as a couple, and I'm very aware of that, but I usually keep my fingers crossed when it comes to the vows bit,
Even with a failed marriage behind him, Hector didn't look on divorce as failure. He still believed that 2 could become 1.
I was with my second wife for about 7 years, actually, before we actually got married, and we didn't marry in a conventional way, but I was older, I was more mature at that time, and I did think of us as, as a sort of single unit for the rest of our lives, kind of thing. For an awful lot of external stresses were put on us during that relationship, and that probably had quite a lot more to do with the breakup than ourselves. But again, we managed to break up in a nice enough way that we weren't trying to hurt each other or bitch at each other or financially ruin each other. We're still be friendly enough and we can talk to each other, and it's quite nice. I'm a broader, better person, hopefully, for the experience. I think that's worth saying. Is it worth possibly breaking up with somebody, just to have a quick sort of bit of shenanigans in the studio, like in an afternoon?
Hector works with models and sexual images every day and has to be careful not to cross the line and put his relationships in jeopardy.
I'll be working in so close sometimes to somebody, and where it's warm, the girl is trying to exude and be sexy, so obviously that's going to appeal to me if they're being sexy in front of me, and sometimes they will cross the barrier and get past the camera and to me, and I'll say, oh yeah, this is great, blah blah, and then there is a lot of flirty talk and messed about kind of sexy talk and stuff like that. So occasionally, you might, the sexual energy might build up a bit too much, and I'll be thinking, ha ha, brilliant. And then I remember that I'm in a relationship and I'm meant to be monogamous, and wherever possible, I try to be monogamous. So only in that way, but it's not. This is such a rare event. I mean, don't get the impression at all that it's like that. It's not. Generally, between marriages, I'm out there trying to get as much as I can get. But I'm getting older now, so it's getting harder. Goddamn,
Twice divorced, fetish photographer Hector Heathwood has given monogamy his best shot and failed.
Well, when I'm in a relationship with somebody, I am monogamous. Mostly. I do my very best, if that's. But between relationships, I have no rules on me whatsoever. I'll just do whatever I like. But it's a different nature of beast. When you're in a single person monogamous relationship, it's a very different thing. There's a lot more emotional involvement and reliance on each other, and that bonding thing where you start to think, not as a person but as a couple, you know. And I'm very aware of that, but I usually keep my fingers crossed when it comes to the vows bit, you know. Clothes like PVC and rubber and stuff, they bring a whole other side to it, because they have a sort of sensuality of their own, especially rubber, where it's smell, touch and sight. It's an all-engulfing kind of thing. But to turn that around, you know, I mean, a lot of people would say to me, you know, oh, that's wrong and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, but when a woman, you know, gets into her nicest lingerie, you know, and she just bought it out of a nice store and all this, and she feels good in herself, you know, and she wants her man to notice she wants her man, well, isn't that just another form of the same thing? I don't understand why putting on PVC is different from putting on silk. You know, people who are in the kink community, you know, they don't want it to become nice and acceptable in day to day, because it's the fact that it is something a wee bit other, a wee bit outside. That's part of the thrill of it. And that's important. It's an important part. It should be a fun part of anybody's life, not something to worry about, feel guilty about, or feel pressured about.